Everybody, it's Amy Jo. Haven't told a story for you all in a little while, but we had some things going on. We're getting things sorted out, and I thought it'd be fun to tell you what's called a shaggy dog story tonight. Shaggy dog story is one in which, the story is unnecessarily shaggy and rambunctious, kind of like a big furry old dog, and kind of goes all over the place and ends with a pun. Some people would call these groaners, but this is just good old story stuff. And you probably already all know a shaggy dog story or two. I'm going to tell you one of my favorites. This one's called Eloise the Moth. So Eloise was an adorable little moth living in her little adorable town, and she worked at the library, and she was just a good-hearted, down-to-the-earth sort of moth. And she had a pretty good life, but you know how it is. You just get a little bored. You want a little excitement. You want something, I don't know, a little pizzazz, some fun in your life. So Eloise thought, there's got to be something going on. I think there's a fair coming up this weekend. And so Eloise went to the local community board and found some information on the fair. And sure enough, there were some contests she could enter, and there were some concerts, and she thought, oh, maybe I'll get a new outfit and I'll enter one of those contests. And at this point, it was so close to the fair starting. Really, the only one she could enter was the eating contest. And Eloise thought, well, I like to eat. I'll do that one. And so she got ready for an eating contest. And the way you do, she called some friends and told them what she'd done, and they had to get together. They had some tapas, and they ate some appetizers, and they went out, and it was a good time. Well, when the day of the fair showed up, Eloise sat down, and it was a local chef had put on. They were living in a little Swedish Norwegian Mothville there, and they had some riced potatoes, and they had some Swedish meatballs, and they had some buns with cumin, and it was delicious. It was the best. And Eloise just kept eating and eating, and she was loving every minute of it. She was loving it so much she didn't even notice that she won. She won. Who knew? And she was just having a great time. It wasn't hard, and people clapped her on the back, and they shook her hand, and they took her picture and put it in the paper, and she really had a great time. She kind of thought that would be the end of it. But then one of the organizers came up to her and said, hey, there's going to be a regional fair coming up soon, and maybe you should enter that eating contest too, because there'll be an eating contest at the regional fair as well. And Eloise thought, well, I've got some vacation time. I'm not really doing anything with it. Yeah, why not? Why not? I'll do that eating contest too. And so she did. She signed up, and she traveled with some friends, and it was just like the first one. She ate all this great food, and it was from all over, and there were more German people in this area, so they ate Wiener Schnitzel and Rindfleisch and Kartoffeln and all the yummy things with Black Forest torte cake afterwards, and again, she just was enjoying every minute of it. The excitement and the energy and all the people she met, and she won. She won the contest again, and she just had never won anything before in life, and now she'd won two things, and she thought, oh my gosh, no one's going to believe this back at work except my friends who were here. And again, she had her picture in the paper, and people clapping her on the back and shaking her hand. It was such a good time. And just like the last time, one of the organizers came up to her afterward and said, Eloise, you've got a knack for this. You're really good at this. You should come to the state fair. You should come to the state fair and compete in that eating contest too. And Eloise thought, I don't know, going all the way. But they wouldn't hear it. They're like, whatever you need to make this work, we need to make this happen. So sure, she signed up. What are you going to do? It seemed to be fate, right? And so she signed up, and she took the time off, and she was kind of excited. And this time she thought, well, this is getting a little more serious here. Maybe I should prepare. And she didn't get around to it. It's just busy. And now every time she went out in public and at home, people were shouting her name and taking pictures with her, and And all before she knew it was already time for the state fair and the eating contest at the state fair. And she went, and oh, this time it was all Mexican food, and oh my gosh, she had enchiladas and tacos and burritos and tortas and quesadilla and all the fixings, homemade salsa, and oh, guacamole, and everything wonderful. And again, she just was loving every minute of it. She was loving the mariachi players they had, and just all the people she met, and oh, the food was just amazing. And she didn't even realize that she'd won again. I mean, who would believe this would happen 3 times? But she was just so enjoying herself and enthralled with the experience. And once again, you know, the people were clapping her on the back and shaking her hands and taking pictures with her, and she couldn't believe it. And you know, this time nobody really came up right afterwards, and that was okay. You know, she was there with a couple friends, and they were congratulating her, and they decided to make a weekend of it, you know. But then just before she left, one of the organizers found her and came up. We've been looking for you. We want to invite you to the regional, like Midwest fair, and you got to come. There's going to be an even bigger eating contest, and you should totally compete. You really have a knack for this. And Eloise thought, I don't know, this is getting out of hand. I mean, what has my life come to? What is this? And this time she would have to take off like a whole week of work, because this was a big deal. But you know, she thought, why not? When is this ever going to happen again? So, sure, she signed up, and her friends are like, we'll come with. And she went, and oh my gosh, it was amazing. This one was international. There was food from all over the world. I mean, there was bugali and sombe from Africa, and jollof rice from Africa, and there were dishes from Asia, and lumpia, and onigiri, and you name it. It was just incredible, and food from all over in Europe, and oh my gosh. And she just wanted to try a little bit of everything. She didn't even really realize she was doing it again. She was winning the contest. I mean, oh, I give out. Eloise, what is this? She was just this mad genius for eating contests, and her friends were cheering, and more people from back home had come with, and they were in the stands, and they had made little signs for her, cut out like plates and chargers, and they wrote, "Go Eloise" on it. She was having the best time. And of course, when she won, there were people shaking her hand and clapping her on the back and wanting to take pictures with her, and she was like small town famous, you know. And just as she and her friends were about to go, one of the organizers came up again and he said, Eloise, you've got to be in the National Fair eating contest. All the big moths who are winning eating contests are going to be there. You've got to compete against them. We think you've got a chance, you know. And do you have a coach? And she was, I don't know about a coach. But she said, sure, I'll go. And at this point, her boss had told her, take whatever time off you need from work. We'll be fine. This is your chance. This is the brass ring. And so, yeah, she did it. She thought, this will be so good. So she signed up, and it was a big to-do. It was in Washington at the Washington Mall, and there were people from all over the country, and fusion food, and there was stuff from South America, ceviche, and there was stuff from Canada that they had poutine, and it was just, everything was just perfect, just absolutely perfect. And Eloise could not have been happier, and again, she just couldn't believe it. She was just enjoying the food, and all of a sudden they said she'd won. And what is this? How does this happen? And before she knew what was happening, she was signed up for the International Eating Contest. This was the grand championship, for the world. And it was going to be in Paris, France. And Eloise was like, oh my gosh, I've always wanted to go to Paris and see the Eiffel Tower and the Louvre and eat at one of those really nice French restaurants. And her friends, some of them said, oh yeah, we're going to come with. We wouldn't miss it for the world. And the big day came, and she was with the delegation. She was with all the winners from the U.S. and Canada and Mexico and all up and down North and South America, and they'd all flown together to Paris, France, and there was a men's team and a women's team this time for the first time. Who knew? But when Eloise got to Paris and the plane landed, one of the international delegates from the men's team met her and was her mentor or her guide, because it was her first time in Paris, and of course he was French. His name was Pierre. Oh, and Pierre was such a nice Moth guy. I mean, he had a good sense of humor, and he wasn't too arrogant, and he wasn't too stodgy, old school, but he was thoughtful and kind, and he, as soon as he understood that she'd always had these things that she wanted to see in Paris, he was like, "Oh, mais oui, mademoiselle, you must." And so they made plans, and you guys, can you believe it? I mean, Eloise began to fall for Pierre. And what's even funnier is Pierre began to fall for Eloise, and they really made a nice couple. They really were cute. They just went together, you know? Well, the day the big competition came, and Eloise and Pierre had arranged to do their eating competitions where they could see each other and encourage each other. And they barely even noticed what they were eating. I mean, they couldn't even recall it because they were just feasting on the love they saw in one another's eyes. And the food, I mean, it was amazing. It was amazing. It was a wonderful competition where there was music and the scenery and everything was perfect. And it was just about to the end of the competition. They were almost to the very last course. It was the dessert coming out, and Pierre was eating, and he was doing great. In fact, they were both winning, and this was the first time the pressure was really intense. And I don't know if you know this, but if a moth overeats, it can be really tragic. They may not be able to come back from that. In fact, some of them kind of explode. But they weren't worried about that, and they'd seen some other people be let out, and they'd heard some funny sounds. But Pierre and Eloise were just, they'd already decided that when the contest was over, they were going to get married. They were going to go to the south of France, to Marseille, and they were going to spend their lives together. And there was a library position in Pierre's hometown. All she had to do was learn French. But just as Pierre went to put his last bite of dessert into his mouth, he had this funny look on his face. And Eloise thought, I wonder what he's going to say now. And then right there in front of Eloise, Pierre just blew up. Right there. And everyone just looked, and the horrified blank stares on their face. And they were like, "Oh no, Pierre blew up." And Eloise, oh my gosh, can you imagine what Eloise was experiencing in that moment? I mean, have you ever seen a moth ball? Thanks for listening to my Shaggy Dog story, y'all. Have a great night.